Ducati hasn't had a road-lawful single-chamber bicycle in its reach for a considerable length of time, yet it's denoting its return with the most remarkable one-pot creation bicycle available as the Hypermotard 698 Mono. Seeming to be the child Hypermotard that its name recommends, the Mono is the send-off stage for Ducati's new Super Quattro Mono motor, a cutting-edge single got from the 1285cc V-twin utilized in the 1299 Panigale. With 77.5 bhp on draft and a high firing up capacity that is in conflict with the single-chamber design, the new motor means Ducati's reach, once solely loaded up with twins, presently includes singles, twins, and four chambers, an assortment that is pretty much as wide as practically any opponent brand. The press riding send-off occurred on a go-kart track close to Valencia, Spain, for both the standard 698 Mono and a RVE rendition, which is covered with additional items including a Termignoni race exhaust that takes top capacity to 85 bbrp. Might the new single-chamber Hypermotard at any point turn into the new benchmark for the class first break? 2024 Ducati Hypermotard 698 Mono cost. Like the greater Hypermotard 950, the Hypermotard 698 Mono is presented in both base and RVE variations, with the last option conveying a somewhat little premium for its more attractive designs and marginally overhauled spec. The base model beginnings at $10,995, which is $1,800 not exactly. The passage-level Hypermotard 950, while the Hypermotard 698 Mono RV comes in at $11,195. Your additional money purchasing the dark, red, silver, and white designs and double variety wheels, and enriching the RVE with a standard fit up-down quick shifter. The equivalent quick shifter can be alternatively added to the base rendition, assuming you favor the exemplary red and dark of the base model, however, need the comfort of clutchless changes. Assuming you're plunging into the choices, you could likewise be enticed by the Termignoni exhaust that climbs power significantly further to 84.5 rp, in spite of the fact that it's authoritatively for track utilize, as it were. Our test model was a RVE with additional items, including a race exhaust, 2093, race seat, 165, sump monitor, 88, and race foot pegs, 275. Begin ticking the additional items boxes, and abruptly, you are over the 14,000 mark, which is more than Ducati's twin-chamber Hypermotard RVE. To add the quick shifter to the standard bicycle, that is an extra 242 hours. On the off chance that you choose PC, after a 24% store, costs start at a sensible each month. 2024 Ducati Hypermotard 698 Mono motor and execution. Ducati has really shaken off its V-twins just notoriety now, with different V4 bicycles in different specs and limits, representing almost around 50% of the organization's reach. With the Hypermotard 698 Mono, it offers another choice that would be useful as the primary large-scale manufacturing Ducati single since the slant singles dropped out of creation in 1974. In later memory, Ducati has simply gotten back to the one-chamber design once, making the race just Super Mono. 67 models were worked somewhere in the range of 1993 and 1997, utilizing a 549cc single got from the 888's V-twin, and highlighting an uncommon balancer framework with a faker conrod in the foreshortened, cut-off front chamber. Ducati's new Super Quattro Mono motor doesn't utilize a similar imaginative balancer, rather including a couple of balancer shafts, one front, one back, driven by gears inside the crankcase. In any case, similar to the Super Mono of old, a motor fires up a lot harder than the thumper biases of enormous singles could recommend. Sharing the incredible 116mm drag of the 1299 Panigale and consolidating it with a short 62.4mm stroke makes a colossally over-square Super Quattro signifies super square single with a 659cc limit. And negative, we don't know why it's known as the 698 Mono either, considering that limit. Ducati's connection between definite motor limit and model numbers has forever been somewhat versatile. The motor's plan, alongside fascinating materials, low erosion inner coatings, and a high 13.1.1 pressure proportion add to the noteworthy 77.5 HP top at 9,750 RPM, with a fire-up limiter that doesn't hinder procedures until 10,250 RPM. For examination, KTM's 690 SMCR, unquestionably the new Hypermotard's nearest rival, has a greater 693cc motor and tops at 73.8 HP and a much lower 8,000 RPM. The Ducati's force is 46.3 lb-ft at 8,000 RPM, mirroring the disadvantage of such a high-firing up motor. For examination, the KTM makes 52.4 lb-ft at 6,750 RPM thanks to its bigger limit. As we've generally expected from Ducati, there's a huge swath of rider helps: 3 power modes, 4 riding modes, wheelie control, motor brake control, IMU-controlled cornering foothold control, cornering ABS, motor brake control, and send-off control are standard. Likewise, the ABS has a slide-by-brake capability in 2 of its modes, permitting the back tire to be moved in to corners in obvious supermoto style while keeping the slide from gaining out of influence. And keeping in mind that the wheelie control by and large means to boost execution by keeping the nose on the ground, it likewise has a wheelie help setting to assist with keeping it high up while you're flaunting. For utilize away from public streets, obviously. We persevered through blended conditions for our send-off test in southern Spain, which really demonstrated advantageous. During the morning, the soggy and cold circumstances on the 1.5-kilometer supermoto track convinced me to choose wet mode with low pinnacle power, 58 HP, ABS level 4, that is the maximum, Ducati wheelie control 4, likewise the maximum, Ducati footing control 4 out of 8, and a mid-setting for motor brake control. I'm giving you this detail on the grounds that the secret magnificence of the Hypermotard 698 is its pin-sharp hardware and rider helps, so it merited dialing them in before the lapping started. The bundle is so great you can ride around a moist track in relative well-being, learning the format while permitting the street-going Pirelli Diablo Rosso 4 tires to come up to temperature. The wet mode choke reaction is mild and doesn't have the sharp, off-the-base sensation of some single-chamber bicycles. As a matter of fact, that exceptionally significant, shut to 20% open choke association is beautiful for a solitary. You can feel the DTC working. There's a little slide from the back Pirelli, and afterward, it's securely gotten and aligned cleverly back. Out of nowhere, track riding in half wet, half may be wet gets significantly really engaging and has a good sense of reassurance. Later toward the beginning of the day, with the track drying, I settled on street mode. That is full power, 77.5 HP, marginally lower levels of electronic intercession, despite everything that impeccably smooth and precise choke association. As the speed got, the 698 felt less like a major single and progressively like an impeccably adjusted equal twin that loves to fire up. Top power is up at 9,750 RPM, which is high for a solitary, yet it will handily fire up past 10,000 RPM to the limiter 250 RPM past. On target, this fire-up capacity compares to less stuff changes than a typical supermoto single and permits you to clutch the RPM between corners. Optimal on a tight and twisty circuit, or a tight and twisty street, it's probably the case. It's somewhat strange and outlandish to fire up the nuts off a solitary, and, from the beginning, I naturally different up too soon. Yet, you before long figure out how to be less thoughtful and treat the 698's apparently rubbing-free Super Quadro Mono like a twin. In the early evening, we settled on the pricier RVE model total with a Termignoni exhaust and air channel and coarse just wheelie control that raises top capacity to 85 HP, however pushes the asking cost up another $20.93. I question numerous UK Trax commotion meters will permit the full race framework given it hurls out 108.5 dB at 10,000 RPM. However, the explosion between fast downshifts on the RVE's quick shifter is enormously habit-forming. Indeed, even in game mode and with 85 HP on draft, the power conveyance actually isn't forceful. With the DWC wheelie control deactivated, the front lifts effectively in the initial 3 pinion wheels. However, the 698 still drives without a hitch and off the base. Supermotors have gained notoriety for without a level of refinement, yet the 698 changes generally that. The fueling, hardware, and vibration dispensing, with balanced shafts, carry new Ducati refinement to the class. It will be fascinating to perceive how it performs out and about, particularly as the high firing up nature of the Desmo valve engine ought to give it a more prominent maximum velocity than the opposition. One point Ducati's send-off group, purposely, presumably, brushed over, is that while the 698 may be the most remarkable single-chamber bicycle available, it doesn't have the most noteworthy pinnacle force. The three adversaries from Austria all utilization similar engine, which bests Ducati's single. As indicated by Ducati, 70% of its force is accessible from 3,000 RPM and 80% from 4,500 RPM to 10,250 RPM. These are noteworthy figures, and it positively has an attractive mid-range. However, its super short stroke doesn't produce the base-end pummel of the opposition. It's smoother, more refined, and clings to its power longer. Yet for sheer stomach-beating snort, it's left in the shadows.